tons of explosives on Gaza, which is equivalent in terms of power to the atom bomb that was dropped by the Americans on Hiroshima in 1945. Wow. On just this small area, entirely occupied by civilians. 120 explosives have gone on top of those people. And they have nowhere to escape. There's no ability to escape. And so you can imagine the impact of this conflict on civilians, innocent civilians in Gaza since the 7th of October. This is a war crime, and it's a violation of international law. And the Secretary General has spoken about it a number of times. And it must be addressed by all law-abiding, peace-loving citizens around the world. A ceasefire to protect the civilians of Gaza is now. And the same thing is happening, although we're now focused on Gaza. Killings are happening in the West Bank. Israel is pushing the settlers, the colonial settlers who are occupying the West Bank, which is recognized as part of Palestine, pushing civilians out of the way, killing young people, innocent civilians, to make way for these settlements that are, again, against international law.
Yes, and it is very, very sober article. The statement by the United Nations Secretary General Guterres is also a very sobering, statement. I mean, and therefore, conscience is beginning to prike us that this is not business as usual, that this is not war. I think we need to begin doing comparison as scholars between the war in Ukraine and the war of Israel against the Palestinians in proportional terms, and to begin to see the kind of conclusions we'd be reaching. My tentative one is that the war now in the Middle East is worse than the one in Eastern Europe in terms of damages and the havoc being wreaked on the people. And what is happening in Israel reminds me of the book by the Ugandan scholar Mahmoud Mamdani. And Mamdani, that book from time to time comes to my mind when victims become killers. And it goes back to the psychology of the oppressed. When the oppressed gets power and when the oppressed gets positions, that they use the same technology, the same tools and the same tactics against their own victims. And it takes us back to, again, the Second World War and why Hitler is famous or infamous. He's infamous because he introduced the concept of total war. And total war here is war that is said to be fought against an enemy, but essentially you are killing civilians. That's essentially, that was what Hitler was about. When he was killing 6 million Jews, they had no state. Therefore, he was not fighting against the Jews. He was simply killing civilians. That's it. 6 million of them. Now, when he went and, drowned children, British children, in the ocean, using the submarines, he was not fighting against Britain. He was simply killing children. So, and that is why Hitler became so infamous as a person. So we are back to the concept of total war in the Middle East. That's essentially it. We are back to the total war. Why is it total war? The attacks, if you look at today's, the papers, everywhere, it is a bomb in a refugee camp. Who attacks refugees? A bomb in the hospital. Today we are told there is only one hospital, the Indonesian hospital in that part of the world, which is functioning, and it has no power and has no energy, no nothing. Meaning even people to heal from wounds, they can't. If you are wounded, you are wounded. Now it is an attack on civilians. That's why it is the total war.
A result of long-drawn, creation and recreation of identities, national or otherwise. And the most important thing that we need to talk about now is the bloodletting, the senseless, careless bloodletting that we are seeing, Earlier on, it was Israel, 1,000 people death. Now we are seeing, the Palestinians, basically civilians, almost being exterminated, as my colleagues are putting it. What we have failed to see is the spirit of live and let live. The spirit of understanding that you cannot answer violence by violence, because what you get is more violence. Really, that's the reality of basically human history when you look at it. I've said in this forum before that violence will always beget violence. The Palestinians are people. Their rights are human rights. The Israelis are people. Their rights are human rights. So whichever way you go, whichever side you support, you will always stand condemned in some way. That's why I agree with my colleagues that as a country,
distance and the rights of one group or another. In the case of Israel and Palestine, there are two extremists. There is an Israeli extremism that believes that the whole of the so-called Holy Land is the land of Israel, and anybody else who's living on it is an intruder who must be removed by whatever means necessary. And the current government of Netanyahu has elements in it that believes in that very reactionary and dangerous perspective. On the other hand, there are also extremists on the Palestinian side, people who feel dispossessed, pushed out, and feel the threat of extermination. And they are also calling for the destruction of the other. But I have seen that there is a policy line that says if you criticize the actions of the Israeli government, you're anti-Semitic, which is not the case. We must separate the fact that there is the government of Israel that violates the rights of its own citizens and the Palestinian subjects. We must separate it from the hate campaign, anti-Semitic campaigns such as hate against Jews as a community who have suffered quite a lot through pogroms, extermination, and the Holocaust in Europe. And we should not allow that. And the Jewish people are not necessarily completely representative of Israel's repressive actions, nor are most Palestinians representing an extremist position. For example, the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, recognized the right to existence of Israel. But Israel has not reciprocated. They are putting settlements, colonial settlers, onto Palestinian land in the West Bank. They are pushing Palestinians every day. They're killing young Palestinian people in the West Bank as we speak. They're not reciprocating the relationship that the government of Mahmoud Abbas has extended since the Oslo Agreement of the 90s. So it is Israel that is refusing to engage with the Palestinians, to find an amicable relationship. It is Israel that is threatening the existence of Lebanon. You heard the Prime Minister himself of Israel threatening the existence. He says, if you do this, we are going to exterminate you. We're going to do what we did to you before. We're going to finish you off militarily. Lebanon is a small country.
But you're speaking directly to Hezbollah, not Lebanon as a...
No.
Yeah.
No, he